Joining me now for some business news, Peter Switzer, the founder of the Switzer Report. Good morning, Pete. First of all, I just want to ask you about these comments that Peter Costello, the former Treasurer, made last night. It's on the front page of The Australian today. He basically says that rate cuts will not help, and those rates are expected to be cut, so down to 0.75% next Tuesday. What do you think of those comments?
Rate cuts will help, but they won't help as much as better changes to policy. So, look, if we cut rates, obviously it's cheaper for developers to build stuff. It takes away a bit of mortgage stress for anyone who's over-borrowed, all those sorts of things. But what Costello really is saying, I think the headline probably leaves out what he really thinks, is that rate cuts will help a little bit, but there is better stuff they could do. And I think a standout thing would be for the government to spend more on infrastructure, to do maybe even consider some really substantial tax cuts. One interesting thing, Pete, is he said these are abnormal times. I think that's a fair call. And therefore, in abnormal times, maybe it's worthwhile the government thinking about a mini budget to actually do some substantial fiscal changes to get the economy going a lot stronger than it currently is.
Well, Peter Costello, according to the article anyway, which features a lot of his speech, he refers to the fact that there has been a lot of economic imbalances that have kind of accrued over the last 28 years without being fixed. I mean, is that something that you'd subscribe to?
Yeah, and look, but the problem is, Pete, the problem is that we try to sell it. Like, every sensible economist out there thinks that the GST should be pushed up to 15% and income tax should be really brought down to compete with other countries of the world that we compete with. But what politician can sell a 15% GST? So that's a classic example of a policy change that would, change the imbalances, but they won't do it. And similarly, even if you look at what Shorten tried to do with negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts, the country didn't want to accept it, and I can understand why. People get used to the kind of tax regime that's there, and you've made investments as a consequence of it. But it's going to take a very courageous politician to make those sort of changes that Costello's talking about.
Well, like complete reforms, because that's what Costello says, is like reforms are the only thing that's really needed to lift wages and to lift productivity.
Yeah, exactly right. But I've got to say one other thing, and I think Treasurer Frydenberg did get into the right area this week when he talked about regulators backing off the banks so they can actually lend more sensibly. Like, I totally agree that the Royal Commissions came up with the right idea. Banks should lend responsibly, but I think they should also lend sensibly. And at the moment, the pendulum swung to such a crazy situation where the CEO of Mirvac, talking at the property summit this week, said that she found it difficult getting a home loan. And I looked up her salary, $5.3 million. So when someone $5.3 million is finding it difficult to get a loan, there's something there that's holding back economic growth.
Hey, just another point on Costello. He says that the only thing that the cuts, which, I mean, I'll ask you in a second if you think that they will be cut next Tuesday, that the only thing that they will do is just damage business confidence.
Well, I don't think it'll raise business confidence, Peter. Like, if the rate cuts actually spilled over to banks lending to business at lower rates, that would be good for business confidence. But at the moment, I don't think there's a very strong narrative coming out of Canberra that is inspiring business to be more confident. I think the government is responding piece by piece. And we saw, for example, the response to the drought when Scott Morrison came back from America, $100 million to the drought. I think they have to get on the front foot rather than waiting for the whinging at the media level about government ignoring some key issues. I think this government has to get on the front foot because these are abnormal times, as Peter Costello said.
So do you think that the rates will be cut next Tuesday? Is it a foregone conclusion?
I kind of think so. The money markets were saying 80% chance end of last week. Now they're saying 70%. Look, in all honesty, Peter, if President Trump announces a trade deal over the weekend, maybe the Reserve Bank would say, we don't need to do it. But while this trade deal cloud hangs over, I think that they're going to cut interest rates just for insurance.
Are you talking about the trade war? Or the trade deal?
Yeah, trade war. So,
with China? That's not going to happen this weekend, though.
No, of course not. But, this week, President Trump did say a trade deal is closer than many think. Now, the market loved that. That is if you looked at an algorithm of all the things that need to be done to fix up the world economy and the Australian economy, the first cab off the rank would be a trade deal, because then the Reserve Bank would think there's going to be a confidence injection. We don't need to cut interest rates. But until they have that kind of confidence injection from no trade war escalation, then I think they'll cut interest rates, particularly without the government saying, well, we're going to step in and do a lot more spending, which currently they're not saying.
Well, and then I guess that leads to the next question, Peter. Will the banks pass it on?
They'll find it hard. I think Treasurer Frydenberg's going to bounce them to do so. But we might see a 20 basis point cut rather than a 25 basis point cut. Yeah, the banks are really important for confidence as well, because they're so important to the All Ordinaries and the ASX 200 index, and their profits are important to that as well. But I do think Frydenberg will bounce them to pass it on. OK,
Peter Switzer, I'll tell you what, there's going to be plenty to talk about next week. We'll see how that all unfolds. Thanks for your time this morning. Yeah. Happy Friday to you.
Yeah, go the Roosters.
Go the Roosters.